Can everyone see my slide that says customized training programs?
Mhm.
Excellent. Okay. So again, I'm Robin Faircloth, and I'm with a Career Source Northeast Florida. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the program that we offer, which is the customized training program for targeted industries. And we're going to see if the computer wants to. Oh, there we are. Okay. And we'll see if the computer would like to work with me today. So what is the customized training program? So this is a program that provides employers in our 6-county region, which is comprised of Baker, Clay, Duval, Nassau, St. John's, and Putnam, with funds to assist in upgrading the skills of their existing employees. And today we're talking about how to help you offset the cost of training. And we know that you need to train your employees. And so this is one of the ways that we can help you better prepare your employees and your workforce. We offer these grants so that the Northeast Florida workforce becomes stronger. And we also want, on the individual level, to assist with layoff aversion. So we hope to strengthen our employers, and then also on the individual level, strengthen the skills of the individual so that they can stay employed. So why should you consider utilizing the customized training program? First of all, if you're doing any training, you should consider whether there is, and someone's not muted, whether there's an opportunity for you to offset some of your costs. So could your employees benefit from additional training that you're not providing at the moment? Is it lack of funding that's stopping you from offering training that's needed by your company? And could you possibly promote an internal employee to a hard to fill position if they had the right training? So could you find a new way to fill those positions that you're having difficulty filling? So these are some of the ways we hope to help with through the customized training program. For our customized training funds priorities, targeted industries are our first priority. So the first companies that we try to help are those in our targeted industries, which are manufacturing, aviation, IT, finance, healthcare, and transportation and logistics. So you'll see this program isn't just for our manufacturing members. It can also be for our partner members too, because we are serving a wide range of industries. Another of our targeted priorities is our first-time employers. So if you've never had a training grant through us and we were starting to have limited funds, that would give you higher priority. Businesses located in rural and enterprise zones also have a higher priority, and then training that will result in wage growth for the employees. That is not a requirement, but if we need to prioritize the who is going to receive the funds, then that would be one of the ways that we would prioritize the funding. At the moment, we have funds available, and so definitely have the ability to assist companies right now with our funds. So the criteria. So in order to access this program, you need to be an existing Florida business. You have to have at least one full-time employee, and you need to be current on your state tax obligations. And you have to have been in business for at least 1 year. So you can't be a brand new business. This is really a business-friendly program. There is minimal paperwork involved in this program. We can reimburse up to half of the training program's allowable cost, and we're going to go over that in just a moment. And the application process typically can be completed within 7 to 10 days, especially if it's a program, a straightforward program or a class that your employees are taking. It can be a very quick program. The quickest that I've ever seen an application approved is 24 hours. I received it and we turned it around within 24 hours. The Career Source Northeast Florida customized training program can provide funds for tuition. We can reimburse instructor wages. There is a cap of $35. I think when Rob talks to you, he's going to talk to you about having the exact same cap. Curriculum development, a portion of curriculum development can be covered also. Training materials and training supplies. So you'll notice the one thing missing off of here is the trainee wages. So we do not reimburse trainee wages, but the great thing about that is you can use that as your 50% match. So if you're paying, let's just say $1,000 for a class, and you're going to be paying your employee at least $1,000 during the time that they are taking that class, then you can use those wages to offset that cost and act as your 50% match. So what's the approval process look like? Now, the approval process has to take place before the training takes place. So if you have already done some training, we unfortunately will not be able to cover that training. We would want to get an application processed and approved before the training takes place. So first you identify the need for the training. Then you choose your trainer, instructor, or provider. So it can be an outside trainer. It can be someone that you bring in to do the training. It could be a school or an organization that provides the training, or it can be an internal training. So apprenticeship training, the hours that your journeyman or your senior person is spending with those trainees, that person would be your instructor. The business applies for the grant and then is approved, and then the contract is signed. I'll tell you that usually the approval, once we have the application completed, that is a very quick turnaround. Sometimes, again, if it's a more complicated training, might take the application process might take a little while. But once we have that application ready, the approval can happen very quickly. So this is just to illustrate to you that the relationship is really between you, the employer, and us, Career Source, and then your training provider and you. So of course we have some, there is a dotted line connection in that we're looking at what training they're providing to you, or we need to know what training they're providing to you, but we're not trying to sell you training. We're just trying to help you offset the cost of the training you're already doing. So we are not a training provider. We can tell you who has, if you're asking, who provided this training in the past to other companies, we can give you that type of information. And Rob also has a list of training providers that he's worked with or that Florida Makes has put together. But our relationship with Career Source is really with the employer. Now, the employees also have to be eligible for this program. And so for our program, they need to make less than $25 an hour, so $24.99 or less. Our local board has determined that the self-sufficiency wage is $25 an hour. So we are trying to help people get to that wage. Once they're at that wage, then we're not able to assist with their training. The good news is that Rob's going to talk to you about the state level Career Source grant, and that does not have that same wage cap. So if you're like, that's not going to work for us, then Rob may be able to help you. And what often happens is that some trainings can be covered by the local grant, and maybe it may be more beneficial for you to go with the local grant, and some trainings may be better served. You may be better served by going with the state grant, or you may have to go with the state grant because we can't cover it. So just wait. If this one doesn't fall under what you want, then the next one might. So those people that make less than $25 an hour when the training starts, they must be a full-time employee and have been with you for at least 6 months. So interns that are, part-time or only have been with you for a little while, that doesn't work. And those people that are contract working for you through a contract, um, or temporary service would not be eligible for this. The employee has to be willing to um, to complete an intake packet. And that intake packet is similar to the FAFSA. So if you've ever applied for federal financial aid for yourself, or you've helped a student in your life apply for it, that is what the intake packet is similar to. If they are a gentleman, then they have to be registered with Selective Service. And we do have a link I can give you if you want to check that. Some companies have a lot of employees that are became citizens. And so sometimes those people never registered with Selective Service. So that would disqualify them if they have not registered with Selective Service during the period. Let's just say they need to have registered with Selective Service. And then they need to be a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. So that's the employee eligibility piece. So once we've approved you and for the intake process for the packets that they need to complete, they need to complete it prior to training. And usually that's really the first day of training. So when you do your application, we're going to ask you to identify those people who are going to be in this training. You're going to complete a trainee wage list with the names and the titles and the wages earned by those hourly wages earned by those employees. But if something happens and you need to substitute a employee, as long as they meet those requirements we talked about earlier, that's fine. So that's why we do the intake packets on the first day of the training, because a lot of times that trainee list will change. So we realize that, and that's why the intakes are done on the first day of training. The training then takes place, and then you provide us after the training with certificates, invoices, and proof of payment. So the invoices would be if you're using an outside provider. So of course, if you're using an internal person, you're not going to have an invoice. You're going to just tell us how much you pay per hour, and then you're going to create those certificates to indicate what skills they have learned during that training period. Once that information is submitted, then we will reimburse you. Please cash the check. I'll just say, please cash the check once we send it to you. Here are some examples of customized training that we have done in the past. And I find a lot of times that I talk to companies about customized training, and they are like, oh, that sounds great. But once they look at the list, then they start to realize that they are already doing many of these trainings that would qualify. So if you're certifying your employees for forklift, if they're earning certifications for forklift, that's a training that would qualify. If you do the introduction to manufacturing, so Mike was talking about the Leadership Academy, so that program would qualify for this. That class would qualify for this program. If you're upskilling them in welding, or if you're doing SolidWorks training, if you're doing aircraft blueprint reading or ship blueprint reading. Florida Makes now offers the IAMT apprenticeship program. That program fits very nicely with this program. With the customized training program, we are generally able to reimburse you for the $950-ish cost of the online training, and then help to offset the cost of that internal training, those hours that they're trained on the job. Maintenance apprentice is another training that we've covered, CNC apprenticeship, and aircraft assembler riveter sheet metal training. That's a mouthful. So it's easier to tell you what we aren't able to cover than what we are. So we don't do OSHA. So if it's OSHA 30 or OSHA 50, that is not a training that we're able to cover. Excuse me. Microsoft Office. We do not generally cover Word or Outlook, those types of skills. And we don't do soft skills like management, communications, leadership. Those are not programs that we can cover. These are just some of the companies to give you an idea of what size companies have participated in the past. So Baptist Medical we've worked with, BAE, Carlisle Interconnect, Memorial Hospital, Veritas Steel, Grace Aerospace, Flight Star. So it's a wide variety from small companies to large companies. Many different companies have participated and benefited from this program. So what will you need to do? So you'll need to submit an application and an employee wage list. And this should be done at least 2 weeks prior to the training. Because again, we may have to go back and forth a little bit to tweak the application. So we want to have that in enough time to ask you any questions or getting any additional information. But I will tell you that if you are spending a long time on this application, unless it's because the only reason that you would need to spend much time on this application is if you're creating a new training program for your company and you're trying to figure out how that's going to look. Otherwise, this should be a pretty straightforward, simple application. And anything you're struggling with, you should be reaching out so that we can help you get through that process. So you complete the application process. We sign the documents. Your company will sign the documents, and then our CEO will. And then you have your participating employees complete the intake packet. So we will need to collect demographic information. So the way that and then we will need proof of residency and address and social security. So we usually need their I-9. So 99% of the time we will have to have their I-9. If that's an issue, then we really need to talk about that because that's really not very negotiable. We need proof of that they're a citizen or eligible non-citizen, and the I-9 is what allows us to have that. If they're a veteran, we need their DD-214. That's a higher priority of service. So if we say that we're serving as a veteran, then we just have to prove that we're serving a veteran. And then the reimbursement process. So once the training is done, you're going to provide us an invoice if it's an outside trainer, a W-9, so we can make sure the check is made out to the correct people or correct company. Probably not you personally, but your company. Then the certificates of the training that was provided. So again, if it's an outside vendor, then they're probably going to provide you the certificates. If they don't, or if you're doing internal training, then you would create those certificates. So what else will we ask you to do? We ask that you follow up, or we require that you allow us to follow up for 1 year. So again, this training is to help make our company stronger and to keep our residents employed. So you are not required to keep the employee that goes through this training for a year, but we're going to follow up to see what happens to them for that year after the training. So every 3 months, we'll send you an email saying, are Fred and Ethel and Jennifer still employed with you? And if so, how much are they making? And if Ethel is no longer with you, then we're going to ask you, do you know where she went? And if you don't, that's fine. That's part of the reason we have that packet, because we have their contact information and we are going to follow up with them and see if they are now employed somewhere else. And then we also ask you to post your open positions on Employ Florida. Now you can do this already, but those people that we partner with, we really ask that they make sure they're posting their open positions in Employ Florida, which is free. And right now we are doing notification on all of the jobs that are in Employ Florida. So it just expands your reach and make sure that we're able to let our job seekers know about the positions that you have available. So I see that we have some questions. So let me just see what the questions. Or
Probably read them out loud in case other people have that same question.
okay. So to clarify, do companies have to identify the specific training class or program that they are applying for, or can they request a grant for general training with the programs to be identified later? They have to have specific training classes identified, and they also have to have specific start and end dates. Now, if the start and end dates change, that's fine. Um, we hope that the training that you put on the application is the training you go forward with, but there is in some instances ability to substitute training if something changes. We know things change all the time in businesses. Look at COVID-19. And so if you need to substitute, then we can do that. But we can't just give you money for generalized training. It does have to be specific classes. We have to know how much the cost is going to be of those classes and the start and end date. Um, can a company get reimbursed if using an inside company trainer? Yes. So yes, they can. Normally, for an inside trainer, because normally a trainer is going to make more than an employee. I'm sorry, a trainer is going to make more than a trainee. You probably need 2 trainees to be trained at the same time in order to equal the wages up to $35 of that trainer. But yes, it absolutely can be a company trainer, an inside person that is the trainer. Other questions? Okay. Well, there will be more additional opportunity to ask more questions at the end, and I'm going to turn it over to Rob, and he's going to talk to you about the state level grants available through CareerSource. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right, let me see if I can do this without embarrassing myself. All right, and then let's start from beginning if I remember correctly, all right? Try that.
And then go to slideshow view. Slideshow view, slideshow. At the top.
How's that?
No.
Oh, no.
Stephanie, can you take over the screen?
Let me back out and try one more time here. Boy, I'm really messed up.
Stephanie's putting it on there for you. Stephanie's going to do it.
Yeah, please do. Now I can't even get back to where I was. So,
there you go.
All right, perfect. Okay, well, sorry about that, folks. What I want to do is introduce you to 3 more potential grant opportunities that you may want to take a look at. I'll spend most of my time on what's called the Incumbent Worker Training Program, or IWT, you may hear it called, and it is a state CareerSource grant through obviously through CareerSource. And while a lot of the eligibility requirements for both the company and the employees are almost identical to what Robin went over, what I want to do is really focus more on what's different and how that might affect you. So Stephanie, if you could go to the next slide, please, ma'am. Okay, on the IWT grant, it is to cover some of the cost of your education and training for full-time employees. Depending on the company size and the location of your company, you could get up to 75% of your internal and external training cost reimbursed. and more to follow on that and where that cutoff is in just a little bit. You choose your trainer. It could be somebody that you already are dealing with. It could be somebody that I help you with through our provider network. It can be in person. It can be self-paced, or it can be virtual. So that's a nice flexibility, and I believe that's the same thing with Robin's program as well. And next slide. Okay, on the program highlights, just it is an online application for this grant, and you access it. You have to go into the CareerSource Florida website. You sign up for a login, and then you can put in your company information and all of that. But it is an online application, and I'll give you the link to that at the end of the presentation. We are here to help you navigate it. The good part is it's online. The bad part is it's not quite as simple as the local customized training program application process. It is a little bit more in depth. They ask a lot more questions. But the good part is that we have tools that we can use to help you navigate that, and as we go forward. But don't be scared of it. We've done this a bunch of times. It's fairly straightforward and painless. It usually has between $4 and $6 million in the program. Last year in 2020. Actually, that's a bad slide, but a typo. In 2020, there was $6 million in the program. The year before that, there was $4 million in the program. And the thing that you need to take away from it is it's normally exhausted within 5 to 6 months of the application openings. So, foot stomper, this will be on the final exam. Apply early if you want to take advantage of this grant opportunity. Applications open on the 1st of July of every year. And as far as how often you can apply, you can only apply once every other year. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you're fully maximizing, the grant opportunities available to you. Another thing that's a little bit different than the customized training program is you have to identify all of your training requirements for a 12-month period up front. This is probably the hardest part for companies. It's a requirement. We can help you if you have some questions as far as what you should be talking about or in your training program. We have training providers if you don't have those training providers, but just know that you will have to submit that 12-month plan. And you have 12 months to execute it. So if you, for instance, if you have your application approved in October, say, you don't have to execute those funds before the end of June. So you have 12 months to execute your plan. Normally, for most companies, you can count on a 50% reimbursement for your training costs, and that is for companies that have more than 50 employees. There are times when they will bump that up to a 75% reimbursement. That's for the smaller companies that have less than 50 employees, or if you're located in one of the special economic zones, like a hub zone or brownfield zone or something like that. And we can certainly help you identify. If you don't already know, we can certainly help identify if you fall into those categories. And the cap for total reimbursement for any single company is at $200,000. So it is pretty generous. Another different aspect of the IWT grant is there's no salary cap for any covered employee. it could be anywhere from, shop floor all the way to the CEO. Everybody is eligible there. They do cap the grant at $3,500 per employee. So that's another reason why it's imperative that, if you're looking at training grants, to really engage Robin and myself, so we can possibly mix and match. You can't use both grants to cover the same training, but you can certainly apply for both grant avenues that will cover different pieces of your training program, if that makes sense. It does cover both technical and the soft skills. So if you are looking at things like the FCMA Leadership Academy or communications or OSHA 30, it will cover OSHA 30 and some of the higher level OSHA classes. That is available. It won't cover your traditional onboarding or first aid, CPR classes, those sorts of things, unfortunately. And like we said earlier, both grant opportunities do cover internal training programs as well. And just like the customized program, we cap that at, Career Source caps that at $35 an hour. Obviously, they can make more than that, but the reimbursement will only consider that $35 an hour cap. So next slide, please, ma'am. Okay. Company eligibility is pretty much identical to the customized training program. Have to be in business for a year. You have to be a for-profit company, and you have to be in the state. You have to be up to speed on your taxes, and part of the application process is you have to submit a tax clearance letter from the state, and that's an easy process online. No issue there. And make sure that all of your tax documents all line up. They all have the same company name going forward, and this would help some heartache a little later down the line. As we said earlier, you can only apply for the grant every other year. And another thing that CareerSource put into place just a couple of years ago, those companies that operate under a professional employment organization, they are not eligible for the IWT grant because they consider those employees as employees of the PEO, not employees of the company. So be careful of that. Obviously, if you have a contractor that's providing your HR type services, that's okay as long as your employees are your employees, not the employees of the contractor. Okay, next slide, please. And that looks familiar. It's pretty much they cover the exact same costs as the customized training program. The only thing that may be a little bit different is on the instructor costs. They are capped at $200 an instructor hour. So you can have a training that is that goes beyond that, but the CareerSource will only consider that up to a $200 an hour. It does pay also for curriculum development. If you have a training program that is not a quote off the shelf type offering, and it's customized to you, they will allow a certain percentage of the grant to go for curriculum development. So keep that in mind, and that's a great way to to really get a good customized program if you so choose. Next please. Okay, application process is very similar to what Robin was going through. However, like I said earlier, it is an online application. once you submit the application, it does take a little bit longer than the local program, up to count on at least 45 days to get the approval back from CareerSource that your grant is approved. Once you are notified of that, you'll get a packet sent to you via email that you need to electronically sign and send back to CareerSource. If that gets lost in the shuffle, they will cancel the grant and put the money back into the pot. So once you're notified, definitely be on the lookout for this package to come from CareerSource, and be sure and sign it and send it back. Once that happens, you're free and clear to start your training program. And as you complete training and you're billed for it, go ahead and turn it around and request reimbursement through them. My understanding is they're pretty quick on turning that around. So it's not a long drawn out process, and that's also painless. There are some reports throughout the year that you're going to have to keep up with. Just make sure that you are, burning that grant money, and that you're not going to end up at the end of the year or the end of the contract and give them back a whole bunch of money. So just kind of be aware that there are some check-ins that are going to be required, and as you move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, what does it cover? It covers just about anything. Like Robin said, it's probably easier to say what it doesn't cover than what it does. Hard skills, soft skills. FCMA Leadership Academy is right in the sweet spot there. Any kind of lean, ISO, anything like that. And it will cover the hard skills. If you are a company that you have employees that may bust that $25 an hour cap for the customized training program, that can certainly be pulled into the state IWT grant program. So keep that in mind, and that's another reason why it's imperative to talk to both Robin and myself. Next slide, please. Okay. Being an old Navy guy, I always say that takeaways are also called foot stompers. These items will be on the final exam. Be prepared to submit an application early. Now is the time to start thinking about it. Now is the time to start engaging Robin and myself to come up with that grant strategy going forward, whether it be in the next few months with the customized program, and then after that a combination of the customized program and in the IWT grant. If you are having issues finding trainers for specific topics, ISO or quality programs or something like that, really anything, let me know. I can certainly help you out with that. There's a host of, I think we have about almost 300 providers in the vetted provider list through Florida Makes, a lot of whom are actually FCMA members. So that's another Benny there. It really is. If you go through and you look at the sample application, it looks kind of daunting because it is about 5 or 6 levels deep, but it's not that bad. We have tools. We've done this before, and we can step you through this process with no problem. Like I said, really the hardest part is just coming up with that proposed training program. And you're probably already spending money on training. Why not get reimbursed for some of it? It's out there. It's available. You have a lot of resources that are at your disposal. So don't hesitate to reach back and ask for help. That's why we're here, and we want to see you guys succeed. Next slide, please. All right. the IWT grant application information is right there at that link, the Career Source Florida, and it has a link to a sample application, which you can just download and just kind of see what information they're going to be asking for. And it'll also give you the current guidelines. So every year they will publish new guidelines. Most of the time they don't change very much, but there may be onesie twosies in there that that you need to be aware of. And again, I can help step you through that as well. Next slide, please. All right, switching subjects on you, there is another training grant that is available. It has a lot of money in it. I believe they had $9 million in the program this last year, but it's called the Quick Response Training Grant. And this grant is aimed at businesses that are expanding, that are high skill industries, and that they're bringing on, or they're putting new positions in place with wages that are 125% of the state or local average, which for Duval County, it's just shy of $33 an hour. That's the 125% mark, or $68,000. So that's the target of this grant. They're they say it is a 50% reimbursement, but it depends, I guess is the best way to put it. It's a collaborative effort between the local EDCs, the local state colleges, and to be absolutely honest, I haven't done one of these. They're out there and they're available. If this meets your requirements, we can certainly engage and step through. Career Source is wonderful about helping navigate some of the ins and outs. And also through FCMA, we have that link into Jax USA, and the other EDC organizations, as well as the state college system. So this should not scare you off in any way. And let me know if you have a need or you want more information on that. Next slide, please. The last grant avenue that I would like to just introduce you to real quick is the Veterans Grant. It is available, obviously, to veterans. They are very easy to work with. They are just asking, hey, we have this money to support veterans. Let us spend it. So if you have veterans in your organization, this is another opportunity to potentially get 50% of your training costs back, and that is up to $8,000 per employee. So again, it's kind of a mix and match, see which fits, and go from there. I believe there is one question on here. Let me see if I can pull that up. Since companies can only apply for an IWT grant every 2 years, can the application cover training that will occur over a 2-year period? Unfortunately, no. The grant has to be expended in that 12-month period. So unfortunately, that's why it's so important to really plan ahead and maximize that grant. I hope that answers your question. If there are any other questions, I know I ran long here, and my apologies to Ernie. But if there's anything that you guys, any other questions that you have, please let me know. We'll be happy to help in any way. Let's see, clarify that you're only applying for 1-year training every 2 years. Yes, that is correct. 1 year of training every 2 years you can apply. Great. All right, thanks. And with that, I will turn it back over to, I believe Ernie's up next.
Thanks, Rob. All right, let me get my screen up here.
Are you managing it, or is Stephanie doing that? Ernie is.
Does it look like I got it?
You got it.
How's that? All right, great. All right, again, my name's Ernie Aglegov. I'm the training coordinator at BAE Systems Jacksonville Ship Repair. I'm just here to explain some examples of how these training grants came to life for us, and maybe they'll reflect on something that you've got planned. First, I'll go over right here on this slide. It just shows some of the grant awards that we've won through the years and the amounts, and then from which source we won the award money from. So I divide it between the local grant and the state grant with Florida Makes. So a good example of a straightforward training project is right there at the very top. We had customer required training for a specific vessel type for one of our customers, and it was very easy to set up. We got with the vendor, we set up a time and a date. We already knew our target audience for the training. Everything happened as planned, and it was easy to get that contract executed and easy to get that reimbursement back. If you notice through the years, the projects kind of grow a little bit more. So one of the more flexible projects you'll find in the 2017-2018 year, the projects included rigging certification, forklift training, aerial work platform training, welding training. A lot of these training projects, the dates got moved a lot. Production takes precedence a lot in our industry. So we end up moving our training dates forward and forward until finally we can hold them. So that took a little bit more work. And also because of the smaller amount that you're going to receive from in-house training, because the forklift and aerial work platform stuff we do in-house, your reimbursement is less. But our strategy was, well, we know we're going to train on this 8 times this year. So let's plan for 8 classes with 6 people per class. So there's a lot of tracking involved when you get to more flexible programs. But you can see there that was a pretty good grant year for us, and we pulled in a pretty good amount of money. Next, I want to provide some examples between the in-house and the vendor training. So again, in-house, you get a lesser amount because you're only getting reimbursed for your trainer, your in-house trainer, at a maximum of $35 an hour. While the vendor trainer, they're asking for a lot more money for their class. And so when you do have a vendor-provided training, aside from COVID restrictions, you want to try to get as many people in that class as possible so you can maximize your reimbursement. It goes the same for in-house training, but we know that COVID's changed everything a lot. So we've increased the frequency of our classes so we can try to maximize our grant reimbursement. Something else that we used our grants for is, let's see, the same year, 2017, 2018, welding training. We expanded on our own in-house welding training that year. We improved our curriculum. We developed new printable training materials, and we also purchased a mock-up trainer that we could use for inspections. And all of that was rolled into the grant, and we were able to get a reimbursement for that. So if you already have a specialized program that you're using and you want to expand upon it, ask your grant rep and see if you can roll that in, because you can get some money back from that. The last difference that I wanted to point out is some examples between the use of the customized training grant from your local grant source, Robin, and then the IWT grant through Career Source and Rob and Florida Makes. What we like to do is, with the customized training grant, we can use that annually, and it's far easier to plan annually than it is for every other year. So if there is some high dollar training that you can somehow move into those every other years, that's the perfect combination. And the example that I have is with the crane training. Crane training is very expensive for mobile crane operators. So we try to push those licenses over into those odd years where we can take advantage of the state grant. Meanwhile, some of our riggers in the crane department, they don't quite hit that wage cap sometimes. They're still in a helper status or apprenticeship status, and we get those qualifications going on an annual basis. So there's a big difference between using your customized training grant and your IWT, but when you marry them together, you get the most bang for your buck. Because just like Rob said, we've got to get the training done. It's going to happen no matter what. But by utilizing the grants, we can reduce our overhead and maybe even add on a little bit more training because we reduced our overhead. So how much work are you going to put into this? When I first started this, it took a lot of work because I didn't use my resources as effectively as I should have. So let me go on to the next slide here. So keys to success. What I learned first and foremost, communicate with your industry manager or business advisor as much as possible. Keep them involved during the whole process, because the questions that you don't know to ask, they know to ask, and they'll help guide you along the way. And they've got tools at their fingertips that they can share with you. Planning early, that's always a good idea. If you've got vendors that you're picking out yourself, make sure you clear them through your own procurement department, accounts payable, stuff like that. Do a little bit of legwork to make that a little bit easier. Part of planning early is also working with any department heads to see if they have any ideas about their training needs over the next year or two. You're definitely working with HR a lot. You're gathering employee data, wage information, all kinds of other paperwork. Definitely partner up with HR to get the information that you need. I know a lot of people here are just already HR professionals. As a training specialist, I'm a subset of HR, so I'm not exactly privy to all the information that a regular HR professional has access to. So it's important to get that relationship going and try to get that information as early as you can so you can have it ready for your application. Sometimes working with accounts payable can be difficult in getting your proof of payment requirements, copies of electronic transfers, copies of receipts and checks. So put a bug in the air to make sure they're prepared to provide that for you when it comes time to send in your reports so you can get your reimbursement. And plan for the entire grant year so you can maximize funding. We do our best to plan for the whole year, and then some training gets dropped off, some training doesn't go as expected, and we hit the wrong target audience. But sometimes we're adding on more training. So even as those situations change, go ahead and get with your grant rep and ask them, hey, can we still do this? Can we still get reimbursement for this new project we want to add? Or any other kind of questions that you have, because they are definitely your best source. When I first used the Incumbent Worker Training Grant, Florida Makes hadn't been fully established yet, and I had done that by myself online, and the process was very tedious. We did get a good reimbursement, but it did eat up a lot of my time. But when Florida Makes came along and said, hey, use this tool, this will help us with the application, and we'll do all this legwork for you, I was like, oh. So we haven't been able to utilize the IWT yet with Florida Makes, but we're planning to do that soon in the future. Hopefully my examples kind of brought some lights on for you guys. Maybe you'll be able to use them in your training projects to come. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and reach out. I'll be happy to answer them. And thanks for having me, guys. Sorry I went over.
Does anyone have any questions for Ernie while he is still on? And otherwise, we're going to turn that over to Robin to do wrap up.
I don't see anything in the chat.
I don't either.
Okay.
Good job, Ernie. Nobody asked you a question.
Thank you.
It's really good from the FCMA standpoint to have our the providers of the money. They're going to tell you how to get it, but then for Ernie to tell you the process, because a lot of people say it's too much my time, I can't do it. Ernie, thank you for sharing that between Robin and what Rob is doing, that they do make it very easy for you and save time so that you can go through that process and get those dollars.
Yes, thank you very much, Ernie, for bringing that to life. So I just want to thank everyone. We are happy that you were able to attend today. Rob and I are happy to do a specific presentation for your company or answer any questions that you have. This should not be a super complicated process, or we want to make it as easy as possible. Again, locally, we do have funds available. So if you have projects that are going to happen in the next couple months and they fall within that criteria that I talked about earlier, let's talk about it. Even if you don't have anything, you didn't have anything going on, but now you're thinking, oh, maybe we should. Let's talk about it. And if it crosses that program year, we can look at ways to make that work also. So please reach out. We're very happy that you were able to attend today, and we look forward to working with you.